powered by Riverside FM.
Welcome to Thrive Talking, the Making Men Great Again podcast. The new podcast dedicated to bringing men, the content and community to help you thrive and become great again. I'm your host Tommy, and I'm joined as always by my close friend and brother, Sam. How you doing, pal?
Hello, mate. Here we are again. We're doing a bit of a special today, aren't we?
We are. Happy Father's Day, Sam.
Yeah, you too.
It is
from one father to another.
So that's exactly right, my friend. So yeah, it is Father's Day today, and we've decided to do a little bit of an impromptu episode talking a little bit about fatherhood, just to sort of mark the occasion, and thought it was a valuable subject to speak about this week. We were initially intending to do another deep dive in one of the Thrive and 5 pillars, weren't we? But we decided that we'll go with this today, why it is Father's Day after all.
Yeah, we thought it was a good idea, really. I thought, why not? But it links into everything else we've been saying
Of course it
up
does.
to now, really. We can link everything together, and it just gives a bit of something to chat about.
Yeah.
With regards to fatherhood in general.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, the whole purpose of the podcast is to help men become better in every aspect of their lives, and that includes for those of us that are fathers and grandfathers, you know, whatever the case may be, just being better at that if we can. So yeah, we'll get straight into it, Sam. I probably should just stipulate that obviously, you know, this might cut close to the bone for a couple of people who are listening in, for the brethren. Obviously, me and Sam, as we've just mentioned, are both dads. We understand that everyone listening doesn't necessarily have children, but you know, it's also thinking about the father figures in your own lives, whether that's a biological father, a stepdad, a grandfather. It could just be a really strong man who's been a role model in your life and acted as a bit of a father figure. So hopefully something for everyone to relate to, whether you're a father or not. So yeah, Sam, what does it mean to be a father?
What does it mean to be a father? It's quite the question, isn't it? I guess it try and put it a bit simple. It's for me, it's kind of being a role model to your children in the best possible way you can. You decide to bring this life into the world,
Yeah,
and it's about showing them how to live the life properly. It's teaching them from the beginning, teaching them good morals, good values,
yeah,
and being that good role model so that they grow up to be a good person all around. Because I think, you know, we all strive to be a good person, and if you can instill that into your children from day one, they'll hopefully take that into their life when we're both long gone.
yeah.
So for me, really, it's just about being a good role model
Mm.
and guiding your kids in the best way possible. What's your
Yeah.
thoughts? What do you
Yeah, well,
reckon?
I'm sorry to put you on the spot with that.
No, it's all right.
And it's always difficult when you've not had any time to prepare, and obviously you record and this is going out to the audience, but
The
yeah,
millions.
to the millions and millions, and those in Mongolia and the outer reach of
They're still
Antarctica.
listening, mate. They're still listening.
No, I can only echo your sentiments, Sam. I thought a little bit about it today when we decided that this was the the subject we wanted to speak about today. And yeah, absolutely, just being a role model, to take it a little bit further, to provide and protect the family unit as well, and your children, obviously.
Yeah,
And yeah, just set a good example, lead by example, be someone who they can look up to in a the values and morals that they can aspire towards, and just be a bit of a hero if you can. And obviously everyone's different and everyone's at a different point, but I think the baseline is obviously every dad, unless there's something seriously wrong, wants to provide love to the children. That's the fundamental love and support. But yeah, taking it a step further, it's instilling those morals and values into, so they'll grow up to become a good person, like you say, when we're long gone.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, definitely. I think we can only look at our fathers, can't we? And their fathers, so grandfathers. And if you're lucky enough to go even above that, great grandfather, I mean, you look from one generation to the next, and you try and pick up what you can.
yeah,
I've never been fortunate to see great grandparents,
no,
but
me neither.
I've seen. Obviously, I've got well, I've not got grandparents anymore, but that my grandparents, specifically granddad, both granddads on my mum and dad's side, were model fathers from what I saw.
Yeah,
So, you can only look at that and then try and put it to what's the word? Put it into your life and make them changes.
that's it's a really good point, that, Sam, because I think that's something that's lost a little bit today. There's so much to be learned from those who've gone before us. In each, I mean, years ago, well before our time, that was the given thing to do. It was sort of passed down, that knowledge and that way, from one generation to another. And I think that's been lost a little bit today. But there's so much to be learned from those who've gone before us, and who better to learn from than your family and the you know that patriarchal line, the
Yeah,
patriarchy. Yeah, and I'll just point out again that father doesn't necessarily mean your actual father, or it could be any sort of male role model in your life that's had a significant influence on you for good, and has been a force for good in your life. So
yeah. That's a good point. When you say the word fatherhood, it is anyone who you look up to in a way, isn't it? Who's had a positive influence. But like we say about the brotherhood, and you know, they're not our brothers technically, but the people, the sort of people that become part of your life, and people that you want part of your life, and you want to have
yeah,
a good impact on, and that's exactly the same as fatherhood, I think, for sure.
yeah, yeah. I think one of the reasons why it was so important to speak about this today is, going back to what we've spoken about in the previous episodes, and in particular, sort of the first episode, the introduction, where we spoke about why we wanted to make this podcast, and to share it with people, is that I think one of the reasons why things are going so badly wrong for men today. We've got, there's, I hate to say it, but there's a lot of weak men. There's a lot of men with no morals or values. Common decency seems to be lost. I think society's in general decline, and a lot of children don't have the. One of the reasons for that is a lot of the children don't have a good role model. They don't have a strong masculine presence in their life, or someone they can look up to. So I think it's, personally, and I'd like to think that I speak for both of us here, Sam, that every child deserves a father figure in their life. and a mother, obviously, that goes without saying, but this is a podcast about men.
Yeah, definitely. You are right there, and we can't. We're definitely not ever going to rule out a mother because a mother's love is just beyond anything in it, really. Um, without
Yeah,
women, without women, we wouldn't be here. That's for sure, isn't it?
we'll,
Um,
we'll talk about how men can honour the women in their lives in another episode, and
yeah,
that is equally as important. But yeah, back to fatherhood, Sam.
of course.
Do you agree with that? That it's perhaps a contributing factor to why men are struggling today because there's a lack of decent role models and father figures for a lot of men.
Yeah, definitely. I fully agree with that. Um, I think if you do grow up with in a single parent household, that being a mother, there is that always going to be that potential to be a lack of discipline growing up. Um, and I mean in a sort of, how do we say this? A strong dominant male personality there
Well,
instead of just a mum, which is still a strong dominant personality, but there's the thing about the father that I don't know how to
well,
explain it.
women are entirely different things.
Yeah,
Different biological makeup, different behavioural patterns, different hormones. So how can a boy learn to be a man from a woman? It's never going to happen, is it?
that's true.
And I think that's what you was getting at there, Sam.
Yeah,
But equally, there's a lot of children who've grown up with fathers and mothers and a full family unit, or there's people who've grown up with fathers, or whatever the circumstances may be, but they've still not had a good role model because the fathers have been poor examples to them. They've been weak men.
yeah, that's true.
They've displayed poor behaviours. They've not upheld any decent values or morals, and it goes back to what we was talking about last week, Sam. And you said earlier how everything links in. We sort of spoke about learnt behaviour, didn't we, and picking up good habits. And I remember you was talking about the fact that you never eat fast food or ready meals, and that's learnt behaviour because as a child you were shown by parents, that that's not what you do. You eat good home cooked meals,
Yeah,
and it's that
yeah,
learnt behaviour again, and that's such a huge part of fatherhood is instilling that instilling those behaviours and values into your children, and yeah,
yeah. I think if we go back a long time, I know that physical discipline was a lot more prevalent back in our, let's say, our parents' childhood and our
yeah,
grandparents' childhood. The the male figure, the male father in the house who usually was there, would be would strike fear into the kid. Um, and we're not saying that's good or bad. I mean, you know, we're not advocating hitting your kids or anything like that, but I think there is something to be said about that that fear, what was almost instilled into kids as a young child, and
I,
it just makes them grow up with that bit more discipline, that bit more respect for people. Um,
yeah, I entirely agree with you, Sam. I think fear might be interpreted as sort of a negative word, but I I know exactly what you mean. It's sort of I'd say it's sort of it's respect, isn't it? It makes the child respect the father. There's a fine line.
yeah,
You don't want a child who's quivering at the father's presence because he's such a disciplinarian and he's just not a nice person because again that's not setting the best example. But then you do need that strength and that presence, that masculine presence that instills respect in the children and helps them behave.
Yeah,
So
that's where, like you said at the beginning, that's where a lot of young men now are going wrong, I feel.
yeah,
They wasn't brought up. They're now brought up with, um, everyone's going to finish first kind of thing. There's no losers. Um, you can kind of get away with anything you want, really, by speaking out, I suppose. In some ways, you can be whoever you want to be, which is fine. You can
I
be
think
whoever you want to be, but
I think
there needs to be some discipline there. There needs to be respect,
yeah.
and I feel that it does come from childhood. It does come from a good childhood um, disciplinarian being in the family. I think.
I sort of followed on from what you said there. I also think that, and again, it's something that we've spoken about in previous episodes, is how in the modern world, particularly sort of in Western civilization, obviously we're from England and in the UK, but accessibility and convenience, like children literally want for even like the poor, the poorer demographic, people who are considered low income and poor, even they have pretty much everything they could possibly want, like the children, which isn't necessarily a good thing. Obviously, I'm not saying they should go without. Like there obviously are fundamentals that every child, should I say, deserves. But in terms of like toys and treats and like they literally want for nothing anymore, and I think, yeah, I think that's personally, I think that's probably caused a few problems, and children grow up thinking that they don't have to work hard or um, to sort of earn things. It's instilled into them that they like a self entitlement almost, that they think
Yeah,
they're entitled to everything and they don't have to do anything, which sets a poor example in my opinion.
and that just comes from a lack of respect. I think. Again, I keep using the word discipline, but it's so important. I think that discipline and respect that you have for your parents, which goes on to having discipline and respect for everyone around you as well,
But
which is starts from the early years when you can talk.
if you're a child though, and every little boy looks up to his dad or his granddad or that male figure in his life. That's just the way it is. But and that's good or bad. If his dad's doing things that aren't good, and the son is seeing that, then he's still looking up to that behaviour, and he thinks that that's how someone should behave, and it's just a recipe for disaster.
It's true.
Um, so sort of moving on, Sam. Obviously, I think it's worthwhile us speaking about the father figures in our own lives and how they've influenced us and helped us become the men that we are today, and how they've been a real force for good in our lives. So, if you want to do the honours and go first, and just talk a little about the people in your life, the father figures that have had an influence on you, and what influence that has been.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate that my dad is still around, still alive and kicking and thriving, I'd say. Unfortunately, my parents split up when I was very young, so I did come from what would you call that? A broken family in some ways, where the families were split, which I was too young to remember, so I don't really recall any problems around that time. But as far as I was concerned, it was always everything was always normal for me as a kid growing up.
Yeah,
I saw my dad. Uh, it luckily he moved around the corner, so I saw him very frequently. Um, and brilliant to be honest. Like as a young lad, I was massive into rugby, as was my dad. He was there at every game, every training session. He was there. You know, as far as I'm concerned, like, it couldn't have been a better figure for me, in terms of, um, like sporting achievements, I'll say, and just being like a good person, like, respecting everyone. I still to this day have never heard my dad swear, still to
Yeah,
this day, which I think's a brilliant thing.
yeah,
Um, Treats everyone with respect. But because I was so into rugby as a kid, I'd go and watch my dad every weekend playing rugby well into his 40s, and I thought that's what I want to do. That
yeah,
inspired me. But I'm also fortunate enough, that I've got a stepdad in my life who's been there for the past 25 years. You know, one of the best men that I could ever, you know, I can't speak highly enough of him. Um, an incredible person, has done more for me than a lot of people in my life. Would never
yeah.
be able to repay him or thank him for everything he's done, and he still continues to do to this day. And I think I'm very fortunate in that way that I've had two role models, almost two dads in a way. Um, so two
That
for one, in
no,
a sense.
that's incredible, Sam. And I think that obviously believing in the family unit is one thing, but I think you've just highlighted the fact that even if parents do split up, it's not always necessarily a bad thing because you've had two really good role models and father figures in your life.
Yeah,
So sometimes it can actually work out for the better, which is it's great to hear that. And I was just going to ask you a little bit. So you mentioned obviously watching your dad play sports and how he treated people with respect and how he conducted himself and stuff. I was just going to ask like what sort of values and behaviours specifically as it sort of instilled into you as you've grown up and become a man yourself.
um, I'd I'd say just, all round being nice to people. I know it sounds quite simple, but that's it. I never saw him have a cross word to say to anyone. I never saw him, behave in a way that I'd think was, irresponsible,
Yeah,
things like that, and just with, in general, instilling a good, um, work ethic, and a good sort of, you got to keep yourself fit. Instilling that into me, going to the gym from a very, very young age. That's stuck with me now and forever will. That exercise is so important, and that started with
yeah,
my dad taking me to the gym when I didn't really want to go. I'd rather be doing anything else. And um, but it's not just actual fathers. It's the grandparents as well. What for me had such a big influence on me. I can't even begin to tell you that the grandparents, as we all know, are really incredible people. If you're lucky enough to
yeah,
have spent time with them, they are the people that will do literally anything for you. In my experience, anyway. Um, and I've had two actual granddads, blood related, and then I had a step granddad, and I mean like all incredible people. They could not have done more for me in my life, and they never really had to, in a sense, because they don't, do they really? They're not obliged to raise you in a way like your parents are, um, but they do, and it's hard to talk about grandparents for me without getting emotional. So because none of them are around anymore, and it's quite recent. So it's tricky
yeah,
that, but I couldn't go on without saying that they're the best people that I've ever had in my life, and
yeah,
I'll never be able to thank them ever.
yeah. No,
So
that's
yeah,
thanks for sharing, Sam. Just on grandparents, like just that generation as a whole. sort of the age of our grandparents. Just an absolutely wonderful generation of people. Around sort of war and just post-war time. Um, the just some of the, like you've said, Sam, just some of the best people that you could ever meet, you could ever have in your lives, and yeah, like you, sadly, I lost all my grandparents now. None are surviving, but yeah, had a huge impact on me as well.
And I should say for people listening now, um, if you if your if you're a family growing up with young kids, you've got to try and get your parents or your kids' grandparents involved in the life, because if you don't, you'll just regret it
Yeah,
so much. Like, and I know everyone's in a different situation, aren't they? We can't generically speak for everyone, presuming everyone's got great families and everyone's all lovey-dovey. But from my experience, I wouldn't be the person I am now if it weren't for grandparents. I can
yeah,
definitely say that for sure.
and I know I hope you don't mind me mentioning Sam, but and we'll speak about it a little bit in more detail shortly. But I know you've also mentioned sort of the relationship that your dad has with your son as well, and sort of the going back to grandparents and the impact that they have. I know you've said that that's a special relationship as well. So
Yeah, it really is. It really is. It's that grandparent grandson connection is
yeah,
like it's like no other. As
mm,
as I hope you learn
yeah,
as you probably will as your little one grows up.
yeah. So on father figures, for me, who've influenced me, obviously my dad, and very similar to everything you said about your own dad, Sam. Really, never heard my dad swear. Um, just growing up, just showed me how to be a decent person, really, and how to behave, how to be a good member of society, of the community. The main thing probably from my dad, to be honest, is just how selfless he was with his time, and continues to be. In advancing in years now, and not as fit as he once was. Obviously, he's no spring chicken anymore, but just so selfless with his time. He would always put, um, whether it be his children, a neighbour, anyone who needed any help, or advice, or any of his time, always put them before himself. Sometimes probably to his own detriment, but always happy to help other people, and just a really selfless person. Um, which I think is, it's something that you don't see much of today anymore. People are generally quite selfish and just out for themselves. But yeah, he would always, whether it be go round to a neighbour and do a job, or sit down and spend time with his kids to help them through something. You know, Whatever the problem, however big or small, he was there to help us. And I still reach out to him regularly now. Obviously, I live 3 hours away, but if I've got a problem, it might be a piece of DIY or something that I'm stuck with, and just get on the phone to my dad on video call, and he'll be there for me, and he'll help me through it. Um, you know, Everything from changing the brake pads on my car to
Yeah,
um, financial advice. He's just been a real force for good in my life. And the other thing was as well, never once heard him complain about anything. Never once heard him say that he's too tired, even though he was probably shattered. You know, he worked 7 days a week for most of his working life to provide for 4 children.
It's incredible. There's a lot to be said about that on its
Never
own.
had a day. You know, I can never recall him having a day off work sick. Can never recall him complaining that he had aches or pains or he wasn't feeling well. And when we talk about men being weak today, you know, I think that just speaks volumes. How many men now just probably, myself included, that we complain about this and that and the other and how tired we are. I think sometimes we just need to man up and get on with it, and probably look at those who've gone before us, our fathers or grandfathers, and just, such strong men.
I couldn't agree
And
more,
then
mate.
and then just the other one for me was my mum's dad, my granddad, who I'm named after actually. He named after my granddad and my dad, so Tommy John. And yeah, he was just an incredible person. I just wish that I had longer with him. Really, I was sort of just in the early stages of becoming a man when he passed away, and I desperately wish that I had more time with him. Knowing what I know now with the life experience I've got now, I would have loved to have had some proper conversations with him man to man and let him impart some of his wisdom. His wisdom on me as a man with that experience and that age. But yeah, for my granddad, just the most loving man that you could ever meet. I mean, I think he's sort of instilled that into me. The importance of giving love and support, and a good sense of humour. That's what I'll always remember about my granddad. So yeah, but like you, Sam, I do find it difficult to talk in great detail without getting too emotional, because such an important influence on my life, and I miss him dearly. And like you've already said, I can't thank them enough. Yeah,
It's hard to talk about, isn't it? Especially on a day like today, where we're having a celebration of fathers, and I hear everything you're saying there, and I'm thinking, flipping heck, what role models these people were in our lives, and they don't necessarily have to do some like really big miraculous thing. It's just them being them, isn't it? And we're
yeah,
looking at them from a distance or from close up, wherever it may be. And you think, wow, this is how I should behave.
yeah,
This is really how I should behave. We go back to our grandparents. These were what I would call a proper men, proper
yeah.
men's men. Like
Real men.
they've literally lived through a war, and if they haven't lived through a war, more than likely they've probably been in the army or some form of, whatever it may. I know my granddad did. I've heard every story about the army known to man. We'd all sit there like sat round him looking
Yeah,
up, thinking as he rattled out all these, when I was a lad and we used to march from Wigan to Scotland, stuff like that. It's just like that's
yeah.
what on a ration of
But
a tin of spam and some bread. You know what I
with
mean?
without complaint though, Sam, as
Without
well.
complaint, literally. Yeah.
Can you imagine now? And I
Whilst
was just
raising
gonna,
6 kids as well.
yeah, exactly. And just on that, like my dad went down the pit at 16. Can you imagine sending a 16-year-old down a pit shaft now, and like telling him to crack on?
There's
It's
just no
just,
chance, is there?
but yeah, no, it's listen, the brethren, those who are tuned in from all over the world. We're honouring our fathers today, and the grandfathers and the father figures, the role models in our lives. We'd love to hear from you, to tell us about the men that have been father figures in your lives and who've influenced you and been a force for good in your life. So please reach out and share your experiences with us. You know, and if you'd like, we'd even be happy to sort of revisit the comments and the feedback that we've got from you on the next episode and share that, if providing that's what you'd like us to do. But yeah, we're honouring men today. We're honouring fathers. So so important, so important.
Yeah, definitely. So I think we don't want to keep going on. We don't want to make this a really long podcast. It is a bit of a special for the Father's Day.
Well, I think it's probably a good time to speak about our experience then, Sam. Obviously, we are both dads. We're both at different points in our sort of journey as fathers. You've sort of couple of years ahead of me there. You've got a little bit more experience. So yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about your experience as a dad so far and how you found that, and you know what's the things that have gone well, the challenges that you faced, or
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're definitely both at different stages in fatherhood in terms of the age of our kid and our sort of family setup.
yeah, different
Yeah,
circumstances, and
definitely.
hopefully you know stuff that people can relate to though, because we have different experience.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I don't want to. This is a podcast about getting men thriving, so we're not going to go personal about, you know, everything, are we? Like
No,
why we're at where we're at. Um, but I will say, plain and simply, I am a single guy. I am a single dad, so to speak. Um, my son does live with his mother, who is an incredible mother, for sure, definitely. I see my son um, every other weekend, which is the arrangement we have. Um, but for me, uh, fatherhood, being a dad to a son, is incredible. Um, that's as simple as I can put it. It wasn't always easy for me at the start. Being a dad, it was really really difficult. I did find it hard, and I'm not scared of saying that. Like many dads out there, probably feel the same.
yeah,
Um, but I've grown into fatherhood almost. Um, I've learned to be a lot less selfless. That it's not, even though I have to look after myself because I am me. You know, my son is way more important than me in every
yeah,
way now, literally. Um, you know, I wouldn't be here without my son. Like it's just it, and I feel like as I'm getting older and he's growing up, I'm seeing him change. He's got personality. This is the time where you sort of instill into him the values and the morals that you think are right,
yeah,
and try. I mean, don't push, but encourage him into sort of. I don't know. I'd encourage him into sport, but that's just me, because that's what my dad did and that's what his dad did. Um, and yeah, I think just for me now, it's just making sure he is respectful to everyone. I'm so big on the respect. You know, whenever he's
mm,
around people, it's have you said please? Have you said thank you? You know, just little things like that. Making sure he treats everyone um, in a good way. Um, and as well, I just got to say that fatherhood and being a parent, it definitely changes you as a person. Literally for me, straight away. Um, for me, I get a lot more emotional at things than I
Yeah,
didn't normally did before. Like, I mean, it sounds daft, but crying at films, where there's families and stuff like that, and it does change you because once you bring a life into the world, or you're part of bringing a life into the world, it's just no longer about you anymore, and that's
mm,
all you think about. You think
yeah.
about your own longevity to make sure you're around to give your kids the best life, and I think that's where I'm up to. Yeah. What about you?
Uh, No, that's excellent, Sam, and thanks for sharing again. And we've always said that this podcast is sort of an open forum, and it's all about honesty and integrity. So even if it's difficult sometimes to speak about things like, a little bit emotional, we will do our best, and we're here to provide support and help and encouragement and help each other. So, but it's great to hear that, Sam, and you know, I've enjoyed hearing your perspective, really, and you're absolutely right. It does change you, and I think I can certainly relate to that and becoming a more emotional person following the birth of my son. Um, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to put into words, isn't it? It's such a significant thing to become a father. Um, Personally, I think it's the most wonderful blessing that I could have ever hoped for in my life, and it's put everything into perspective, like you say, that it's not all about me anymore. Um, my son is the most important thing in my life, and just wanting him to have the best possible life and upbringing, and that's my priority, and a key part of that is how I can be a role model to him. And fortunately for me, this sort of way of thinking that we're talking about on this podcast about thriving and being great men, it's something that I've consciously been thinking about since just before my son was born. So I have, I still, don't get me wrong, don't get me wrong, I get things wrong, because I'm only human, at the end of the day, I'm flesh and bone, but I am conscious about the example that I'm setting to my son. And of course, he's only young, he's only 17 months old, but they're so intelligent, and they're taking everything in, and they're looking at you, um, and they're seeing what daddy's doing. So I am really conscious of how I conduct myself and in front of him, even at the tender age that he's at. But yeah, it's such an important thing. I just want to be the best dad that I can possibly be. Set the best example for him. Give him all the love and support that he could ever possibly need. Um, Teach him to be respectful, like you've said, Sam. So important. And sadly lacking today in society from what I've seen and what my experience is. Not a lot of children have respect. They've not been taught that from the parents. So that's very important. Teaching him how to be respectful and how to conduct himself. Um, Teach him how to be loving and gentle, but also strong. And just trying to instill all those different values and behaviours. But yeah, my experience today, it's been the best experience of my life so far. Um, I absolutely love being a dad, and one of my favourite parts of being a dad is just watching the growth and the continued growth and development of that little person that you've brought into the world, that you've played a part in bringing into the world. So yeah,
It's fantastic,
It's
isn't it? Seeing them change from,
it's incredible.
and you like we said, you're 17 months, mine's at 6. So
Yeah,
I've seen that change from first words, walking, first day at school, winning his little sports day. It's incredible, and they give you so much joy in many ways, as hard work as it can be with the tantrums, and financially it's also difficult. Um, it just brings so much joy.
I'm laughing because I was actually just thinking myself, I've never been as tired.
That's it, yeah.
I've never been as knackered in my life, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
That's it. And they do.
Y-
I think your kids definitely motivate you, don't they, to be better yourself, and that's what we're
They
trying to do.
should do.
They should do, yeah.
Yeah, for any decent bloke, for anyone who's got that self awareness, who's aligned with what we're trying to do with the podcast, then most definitely, you want to be better for your children, of course you do. So it is Father's Day, Sam. Have you had a nice day? I should have asked you earlier.
I have had a nice day, yeah. It's been very, very wholesome. It was
Yeah,
for the first time in a long time. All of my family on my dad's side, it being Father's Day, got together and we had a bit of a picnic, which was good in so many ways because I was both with my dad and my son and the other men in my life. I've got a
yeah,
few uncles. Um,
yeah,
they're other influences that I've not even mentioned yet, but they're people who've been there as far as male figures go, and it's just a brilliant, nice day. And these are the days that we will look back on in years and be like, remember that day that we had by the lake on Father's Day? And it's just a nice
yeah.
memory. It's just a nice memory that's been created today.
And that was 3 generations of men in your family, was it,
That
Sam?
was it.
Your dad, your uncles, you and your boy.
Yeah, that's it. It's brilliant.
Special.
It is.
It is.
What about you?
Like you said. Yeah, fantastic day for me. The only thing that would have capped it off really would have been able to um, spend some time with my own dad. And like what you've done, I've sort of 3 generations there. But yeah, I fortunately I saw my dad a couple of weeks ago, and I was able to have a little bit of quality time with him there, and treated him to a nice bottle of single malt. And I'm
Tremendous.
going to give him a call. I'm going to give him a call after we've finished the podcast just to catch up with him and see how his day's been. But I've been on my own today. The missus has been at work on a long day, so it's been dad and lad time, and I've absolutely relished it, to be honest. Like you, Sam, I've got a keen sense of adventure, and I like getting out and about in the great outdoors and exploring. So I nipped up to a beautiful part of the county with Albert. We took a picnic. We had a bit of a splash in the river. We had a walk. We just had some real good fun. And then we've come home and just been playing in the house. So it's just been real quality time with my son. And like you said, it's memories that'll live long. Just me and him having a picnic on the bank of the river, and beautiful sunny day. It's something that I'll never forget, and I'll cherish that memory as long as I live.
That's what it's about, innit? Especially in these early years. You don't have to spend a fortune because all the children wants is your time. They want to see
Mm.
you. They want to spend time with you. So it's not about money at this point, is it at all? In the coming years, it's going to be, well, I want a PlayStation, I want an iPad, and you know what I mean. But still, you can still get out.
Hopefully not, Sam. If we do it, we'll do our best to avoid
I
that.
know,
But
but yeah,
yeah, it probably is inevitable, isn't it? But
unfortunately, yeah.
um, Sam, I think I should probably mention. You mentioned uncles who've been another influence on you, but I should probably mention my brother, because my brother's 12 years older than me, um, almost 13 years older than me, and so when I was at sort of an impressionable age and still growing up and finding my feet, my brother was already an adult. He was already a man, so he also had a huge influence on me, and not a not a father figure because we obviously our dad was there and he was our both of our father figure, but just a huge influence as a man in my life when I was younger. And it's strange now that we're both sort of grown and we're both doing our own thing in life, but he sort of was the reason that I got into health and fitness. I remember when I was young, he was into his training, and it sort of that was the inspiration for me to first get into weightlifting and start looking after myself. I was always itching to be old enough to get into the gym myself because of that. So I felt that I should probably mention that, given what we've spoken about.
Yeah,
And it,
definitely.
to to the listeners, it could be something like that. It could be a big brother. It could be an uncle. It could be anyone who's had that positive male influence in your life. But
Yeah, because we have these different role models, and we're talking about men specifically now, but you're influenced in different ways by different people depending on what they do. Like my dad
yeah,
played rugby, I played rugby. My granddad was in a band, and he was the first person I saw play a guitar. I was in a band and
yeah,
started playing a guitar. So it's direct influence from these people in my life that have had such a big
yeah,
influence on my life.
yeah.
If you don't see things like that, then how are you ever going to learn or know things? You know what I mean? And I think that's such an important thing. It's such an important point to make.
It's no, it is. And Sam, it's been great to speak to you today about fatherhood, and it's been nice for us to both have this time to sort of reflect and think about our dads and our granddads and the people the men who have had a real positive influence in our lives. But before we start wrapping up, I just wanted to ask, as we do in every episode, and in terms of accountability on the stuff that we spoke about on last week's episode, we'll pick that up next time because I don't think it's the right time to sort of speak about that. But in terms of fatherhood, in terms of you being a dad, is there anything that you're looking to do better going forwards? Is there something that you've got an awareness of that you'd like to change so you can be a better influence on your own son? I know there's something on my mind which I'll share once you've.
Yeah, mine's quite simple. Just to spend more time with him. It is
Yeah,
simple as that for me because I don't have the luxury of living with him, so
yeah,
I have to travel quite a considerable amount of time to get to see him. And if I can do more in that, I will, and that is something I will actively do better at, definitely.
yeah. That's good to hear, Sam. But on that, the time that you do have him that you do have with him must be so precious.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, and I think that's probably a good thing sometimes because we can be guilty of taking time for granted. So I'm sure because
Yeah,
of the limitations that you've got on that it isn't taken for granted, and I imagine that it's always really quality time. And from my own sort of experience and knowing you, I sort of know that it is. I'm sure that your lad's always excited when it comes around that he's going to be seeing his dad and spending time with
yeah,
you.
definitely.
But yeah, no, it's good to hear, and we'll revisit that. Um,
What's your what's your thoughts on that? What are you going to do better? Try and do better.
for the one thing that I'm going to do better is just be more present sometimes. And by present, I mean I am present. You know, I see my boy every day, morning, noon, and night. Um, you know, I do work from home predominantly. So even when I'm working, I see my boy. He's not at school yet, so I do see him during the day. What I mean by present is, you know, I'm I, I'm just guilty of not being in the moment sometimes, and you hit the nail on the head before that. You know, all our kids want is our time and attention, and sometimes I'm guilty of, like, an example is, you know, it could be me, it could be mealtime, and he's eating his breakfast, his dinner, his tea, whatever it might be, and I'll find myself with that, you know, that old habit that was spoken about before, that toxic habit that is, you know, we're definitely addicted to our phones,
Yeah, that.
and I'll find myself on my phone scrolling, and then there's a realization, and I think, what on earth are you doing? Like, just be in that moment with your son.
Yeah.
You know, he's not going to be that small forever. He's not going to be sat eating his tea with his dad forever. It's the small things like that that I feel like I need to be. I want to be more present, and I want to be more appreciative of that time.
Yeah.
Just the little things like that. On a whole, we get so much quality time together, and it's a blessing, and I'm always so grateful. But yeah, it's just those little moments where I need to ditch the phone, and it's not even conscious. It's just habitual. But I need to nip that in the bud and stop that.
I concur with that. Just less phone time in general is good. We've spoke about that on the
Yeah,
previous one, haven't we?
yeah,
I'm a sucker for that as well. I will sit there and on my phone, literally doing nothing, not like I'm even speaking to anyone. And I think
yeah,
flipping heck, taking time away from spending the limited time I do have anyway with my son. But you're definitely right. You're definitely right.
yeah. That's the one for me. You know, and please hold me to account, Sam. Ask me if I've stuck to it, because I need support. I need encouragement. It's something that I'm really conscious of. So, listeners, this has been a special episode. We've spoke about fatherhood. We've spoke about the men in our lives who've had a positive influence for good. Me and Sam have both spoken about our own experiences today as fathers. If you're a father yourself, you know, reach out. Let us know what your experience has been like so far as a dad. What does it mean to you to be a father? Let us know your thoughts. Let us know any challenges or barriers that you're facing that are preventing you from being the best dad that you can possibly be to your children. Let us help you and support you in any way that we can. Let us hold you accountable. If you have any hints or tips that we can share with the brethren, or that might help me and Sam with our own obstacles, then likewise, please share. Sam, do you want to let the brethren know, the brotherhood know, where they can reach out, how they can get in touch?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm gonna put the socials in the description of this episode. I forgot to do it last time. Sorry about that. But
And the
and
email
the
address,
email,
please,
of
sir.
course, of course. Yeah, it's all there. We're Thrive Talking on Instagram. We're Thrive Talking Podcast on YouTube, and we're Thrive Talking Podcast at gmail.com on the email. So, you know, it's that easy to find. I did mention then we're on YouTube now. If you don't have access to the Spotify's and Amazons and all that.
We're going global.
Yeah, we're going around the world. It's funny you say that, because we've had a couple of listeners and downloaders in Australia, haven't we, and Thailand. And I thought, in
USA.
USA, yeah, like, whoa. I mean, it's brilliant. That's
Yeah,
what we want. We want it. We want it going global, and it's working.
we do.
You know,
We do.
this is this is for us as much as it is for all the listeners as well, isn't it? You know, we're not getting paid for this. We're not sponsored or anything like this. We just do it because we love it. So I hope it comes
We,
across.
yeah, yeah, that's exactly right, Sam. We're doing this because we enjoy it, we love it, and because it actually it's from the art. We do have a passion for the things that we're talking about, and we want to help each other. We want to help our audience as well, and just men in general. So, Sam, I almost forgot.
Oh,
Please forgive me, but I didn't ask you before we dove into this week's subject. Um, have you been doing your training, saying your prayers, and taking your vitamins?
absolutely, brother. You better believe it.
Love to hear it. Okay, guys, so we're wrapping up. Thank you as always for tuning in. Next week, we will be talking about the next of the Thriving Five pillars, the key components to achieving greatness as a man, to thriving, and we're going to be talking about connect. So write your questions and suggestions in, and we'll read them. We'll read them out next episode. We'll discuss them. We'll answer your questions if you've got any. Please don't be shy. Get in touch. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, please. Like Tommy said, don't be shy. Ask anything. Tell us anything. We love it. We want to hear all comments, all reviews, questions, statements, criticism. Bring it on.
Sam, one last thing before we say our goodbyes. What are you getting rid of? What's your room 101 this week? For children, what you wiping off the face of the earth,
Well,
so we can be better for our
as we know,
children.
Tommy, a lot of kids these days are walking around with vapes in the mouth. Get it in the bin.
Yeah,
I can't. Again, it's a tricky one when you put me on the spot like this. You tell me. You tell me yours. If you've got one, what are you getting rid of?
I've got a few. I've got a few, to be honest, and I'm in danger of being a little bit hypocritical, but it's one of those. I know that it's not good, but I'm guilty of it myself sometimes as well because of convenience. But screen time, for my son, I think screen time is extremely damaging to children. So if you're a dad, if you're a father, and you're giving your kids too much screen time, look to drastically cut that down and as little screen time as possible. Encourage boys in particular, all children should be outside playing, getting their hands dirty, getting wet. The rain shouldn't put you off. In reading, reading is so important. Encourage them to pick up a book instead. Encourage them to have a little bit of a sense of adventure and an imagination as well. I think they're losing so much through screen time, so that's what I'm getting rid of.
Yeah, I concur with that. I know we can't fully get rid of screen time, can we, as a whole? But we can sort of reduce it, can't we? In as many ways as we can.
Yeah. If I could get rid of it, I would, but we wouldn't be doing this podcast.
That's true.
So swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, all right. I'm with you on that one. And we're still putting vapes in there, so that's staying in.
Yeah.
Ban the vapes.
We're making the world a better place and we're making men great again, one step at a time.
Absolutely. Okay, mate.
Sam, it's been a pleasure as always.
Has.
To the brethren out there, good night, God bless. I'll let you do the honours, Sam.
You've been listening to Thrive Talking, making men great again. So it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
See you later.
Until next time.